Hi guys, this is Mignon van Halderen. It's really nice to be able to talk to you about thought leadership. So what I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to do in fact three things. I'm going to give you a clear idea of what meaningful thought leadership entails. I'm going to argue why it is so important in these unprecedented times. And I'm going to give you a strategic approach that might help you in building your own thought leadership strategy during our post-corona society. So let me first start by offering you a couple of quotes that I took from different types of websites, newspapers over the past weeks. So the Financial Times, Corona will shape not just our healthcare system, but also our economy, politics, and culture. A manifest from a Dutch national newspaper from 170 scientists. It's a blunder if we do not emerge greener from the corona crisis. And then in the Fortune, the corona pandemic may be a turning point for responsible business. And to close this off, one more citation from the Dutch Financial Times. Corona is giving big push to digital strategy of big concerns. So what you see in all these citations is the expectancy, but also the urgency to take this time as a momentum for fundamental change. And that makes sense because indeed, we know from classical studies that crisis or disruptive events can question status quo, raise awareness for new ways of thinking, and enable the possibility of change. But here it is the possibility of change. Crises don't make a change by itself. It's that we have to make the change together. So, and I'm taking an organizational perspective in this, and I truly believe that companies can take a thought leading role here. They have a thought leading role to play because they have the knowledge, they have the innovation, the relation, the network to shift mindsets and to collaborate to drive transformative change. And I also believe that organizations who have been taking a thought leading role on important themes in our society over the past years will have a big head start at this moment. So, what characterizes thought leading organizations? So, what we see is that thought leading organizations they build their strategy around novel points of view. What do we mean with a novel point of view? Novel point of views are in fact the viewpoint from which an organization aims to look at its important themes in a renewed and future shaping way. And novel points of views are very powerful because they can elicit new thinking. And new thinking is a first driver to consider fundamental change. So let me just give you a couple of examples of organizations who are driven by novel points of view. So first, Unilever. Unilever has the novel point of view that growth and sustainability are not in conflict. In fact, sustainability can drive growth. Well, I call this a blended point of view because what they in fact do, they blend two opposing frames that people have in their minds, economic growth and sustainability on the one hand, and they were one of the first who were saying, yeah, listen, this doesn't have to be contradictory. In fact, we believe in a strategy in which we can combine both. Well, Unilever is a typical company, I find a thought-leading company that had its successes and failures, but that typifies thought leadership. And the point is that they were able to take a leap of faith and also to engage their suppliers, employees, other partners, to engage them in their new thinking. I see Unilever as thought leading, and I think we should appreciate and learn from their past 15 years. Another company is Renewy. Renewy is a waste management company. And they have this novel point of view very clearly: waste doesn't exist. And while circular economy is currently very topical, Renewy has been thought leading on this theme for years already. Then another company, Philips, which I find very interesting, especially in these times, because now we all seem to really clearly see that the healthcare needs to change. But Philips has been saying that for a long time already, and they have been very intensively with stakeholders, with healthcare professionals, with patients, and so on, been co-developing fresh perspectives on the role of digital health to transform the healthcare. Very interesting to look at. Have a look at their future health index, in which you see in how they take up the conversation with their stakeholders on the role of digital health to transform healthcare. Very topical at this moment. So these are just three examples of companies whose strategies are truly driven by novel points of views, by new ways of thinking. And I hear you saying, yeah, but listen, these are all organizations, bigger organizations, big companies, a lot of money, can stretch their arms. But thought leadership doesn't have to stay with bigger companies. We see many different types of examples from smaller companies, from non-profit organizations whose strategies are driven by new thinking, by novel points of views. Because of time reasons, I can't dive into all those different examples, but you can also always drop me a line to understand more about these companies. So, in fact, organizations, whether they are for-profit companies, big companies, larger companies, startups, non-profit companies, schools, thought-leading organizations are organizations that are driven by novel viewpoints at the intersection of business and society, and that show true leadership in translating these viewpoints into real action and behavior. So, if thought leadership is becoming more important for organizations to pursue, how then to go about when it comes to a thought leadership strategy? When building thought leadership strategies, consider 5 important phases. And you see them here in the thought leadership framework that I developed with my researcher, Ren Martens, at our school. And these phases are, of course, not necessarily following each other up, and they can overlap. But they are, every time again, very important phases in building your thought leadership strategy and continuing it. So the first phase, you see the yellow arrow, is very important. It starts by first being very clear about what your thought leadership intentions are. And you still see many times that people are overstepping this step. They have a desire to become thought leading, but they don't have a clear understanding of what they want to achieve with it. And to help you with that, we distinguish 2 types of thought leadership. Some organizations solely focus on the blue part that you see here in the framework. Their focus then is on sharing strong novel points of views to their clients on themes that are important to their clients, with the aim to be seen as an inspirational source of knowledge and expertise, as the organizations that offers the fresh perspectives and that may help the client in solving their business problems. And although this is a very valid reasoning, and it also may work positioning wise, to me it remains a very classical view on thought leadership. That said, let's look at the green part. That's in fact the type of thought leadership that I've been talking about in this presentation. And this should, in my view, be your starting point. Organizations who strongly focus on shifting paradigm and who try to contribute to societal change. And it's in my view that the mindset of companies who want to work on thought leadership should stretch beyond a single focus on positioning. To me, that's too ego focused, and I think definitely now in these times, stakeholders see through that right away. Rather, explore the renewing role that your organization can take at the intersection of business and society, and start to build trust and engagement around that. And if you do that well, that reflects back on your strategic positioning. And that's also something that we see coming back in some quantitative studies that we did in the past years. So that said, the importance of knowing why you are pursuing thought leadership in the first place, we come to the second phase. And this is the phase where you take a deep dive into the team that matters to your business and society. And you ask yourself what this team means to you as an organization and how you can bring it forward. And this is already, in fact, the phase in which your new thinking starts to emerge. And by the way, I'm saying emerge, not in which you start to create your new thinking, but really in which your new thinking starts to emerge. Because I believe that the new thinking and the fresh perspectives are very often already in the organization, but they are hidden. They are hidden in the organization, and it's a matter of unleashing them. And how do you do that? Well, in this phase, start talking with the fresh minds in your organizations, the deep matter experts. You need to build in time to give these people a voice, to listen to their thoughts closely. Very often, you see in organizations that the time isn't there to really listen to the new thinking, to the new kernels of ideas that are out there in your organization. You also want to connect in this organization to leading thinkers, future thinkers, to authors, to critical experts, critical stakeholders, customers, and invite them to think about the team. Bring those people together and see what's coming out of that. Unveil their shared renewed thinking. Also ask them to reflect on your company's thinking, on your company's growing thinking, and how that, in their view, reflects your DNA and your developing identity. Because I really believe that you have a current identity and you have a desired identity. Your DNA is your DNA, but when evolving into new ways of thinking and into a new future reality, your identity is redeveloping, stretching as well. The important thing is that your identity should not be overstretched, because then you lose your credibility. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, but it should be clear that in this phase is about collaborative thinking, and this should be a collaborative creation process. So this shouldn't be something that should stay in a room of a couple of strategists, marketing or communication people. So let's then go to the third phase, the development of your novel point of view. If you have collected all these new ways of thinking, it's very important that you start to weave this thinking together into a sound and compelling narrative. A narrative in which you are able to challenge the existing way of thinking and to frame your new way of thinking and to engage people into this new way of thinking. So you need to develop a novel point of view that is coherent, that is clear around your new emerged ideas. But once you have articulated your novel point of view well, you will see that it will both be your inspiring action perspective, but at the same time, it will be your anchor point in building your transformational strategy. So this is an important phase. And while novel points of views appear in many different forms, sometimes you see companies having their novel points of views interwoven in their content sharing. Others have well-developed speeches, but I just like to mention this one. This is the novel point of view of Tony Chocolonely. And Tony Chocolonely is, in fact, a Dutch chocolate bar maker. And the company was founded when journalist Teun van de Keuken, who you see here, became aware that there is still always 3% modern slavery in the chocolate bars that we eat. So what he did, he engaged people into his new thinking by making a short documentary. And you can still find the documentary on YouTube. And in this documentary, he first starts by asking people in the cacao industry how it comes that there is still modern slavery in the making of chocolate. When he doesn't seem to get a satisfying answer to this, he starts to make his own slavery-free chocolate bar. And this is how Tony Chocolonely started, which is now a very successful chocolate brand. So again, I just like this point because he really, in this documentary, he really makes you feel uncomfortable with the status quo, and he really takes action to offer a new way, a new approach to making chocolate bars. And this was again only the springboard for their whole purpose-driven brands. But in whatever way your novel point of view is molded, the important thing is that you find the right balance between offering that new way of thinking, helping people to understand your new way of thinking, and at the same time not overstretching your credibility. You have to stay close to who you are and what you can do in making that change. So a question that I often receive is how many novel points of view a company can potentially have. Basically a very valid question. Consider, for instance, a company like Siemens with so many different types of expertise that it's quite conceivable that a company like Philips also has a number of novel points of views. And I don't think there's an exact number to put into this. Like, okay, you can have a maximum of 7 points of views. What is much more important, though, is that you're able to create a logical fit between those novel points of views and seek for a high quality of those points of views. And I take that from brand research. Brand research shows that when people perceive a strong fit between the original brand and the different brand extensions, in the sense that those brand extensions somehow really belong to the original brand, that in fact increases your brand reliability. It will harm, however, your brand reliability if people perceive a high variance in the quality of different brand extensions. So, and that is very interesting, and especially to map that against our questions around novel points of views. So when you have more than one novel point of view to handle, keep a keen focus on the logical fit with your overarching novel point of view. Have an overarching novel point of view and from there extend to other novel points of views and make sure that these novel points of views all have a similar level of quality that you want to reach, and also make sure that you manage it, that you keep a keen focus on managing the quality of your different points of views. All right, then we get to this third phase. So what you see where the first phases were very much about setting your thought leadership intention and building your novel points of views. The following phase is in fact about activating your novel points of views into strong transformative practices. And here's the thing. Thought leadership, I said it again, is not about positioning, but taking a thought leading role in driving transformative change. So to realize that, you have to get people on board. And you cannot do this alone. And to get people on board, if you want to engage them, which you see here, engagement, you have to build trust. You need to earn their trust. You need to earn their belief in your novel point of view and in their trust that you can make it true. So engagement, let's look at the word engagement. Engagement means that people have such a curious interest and belief in your novel point of view that they feel a drive and commitment to create a common purpose, to get on board with you and to collaborate. So that means you have to build belief. You have to entice them in your new way of thinking. Trust is also interesting to look at because trust has, in fact, trust goes into two forms. You have trust by the heart, by the head, and trust by the heart. So trust by the head, in fact, says that your stakeholders really believe that you have the competence, the ability to translate your novel point of view in meaningful impact. That's something that you need to build up. You have to prove that you can do that. Trust by the heart means that stakeholders really believe that you're authentic in this novel point of view, and that you really care about the team that you're trying to advance. So that's not just out of self-interest, out of marketing purposes, but that you're very integral in driving this point of view. So you can imagine that to create engagement, you have to build trust. And your success in building trust and engagement depends on how you communicate your novel point of view. So that's what you see here in the model, and how you act in line with your novel point of view. These two should go hand in hand. And let's see if we can zoom into that a little bit more. I'm going to the next slide. So the two biggest mistakes that you see in communication approaches about your novel point of view with your stakeholders is the assumption that a communication campaign is necessary. It's the first thing necessary to do to bring your novel point of view across. And that once this campaign has launched, this very often expensive campaign has launched, then the job is done. But when building engagement is your goal, then communication should be about building bridges with your stakeholders. If you want to engage them into your new thinking, then you have to take a conversational mindset, not a campaigning mindset. You have to talk with them, create a dialogue. If you want to build belief and trust, like we saw in the framework, then you first seek to understand your stakeholders before you try to have them understand you. This is building effect-based trust, trust by the heart. Even better, try to co-create a new thinking with them. And then you see that communication doesn't start in this, fourth phase. No, communication already starts in the first phase, as we talked about before, in this collaborative co-creating phase. I think I'm just stressing here that the focus and the mindset that you have on communication should also shift from a classical view on communication in terms of, making a communication campaign, sending it out, and then having this feeling that everybody understands your novel point of view. Now, communication needs a conversational mindset, and luckily, you see more and more literature stressing this point. So let's quickly take a moment to focus on the act in line phase before we make a connection to the next phase, the impact phase. So, to inspire confidence and trust, you have to demonstrate that you act in line with your novel point of view. So you have to be very clear and transparent about both the successes and the challenges in this process. You have to take your stakeholders into that, with that. And that means that you have to find proper ways to measure both your strategic impact, based on your strategic intention, and your transformative And although I was saying, thought leadership should start with your transformative focus, I also said that it can have a very strong impact on your strategic positioning. And it's important to track both. If you want to inspire confidence and trust, track both. Business stay business. So measuring your positioning remains important. And there are a couple of companies I think who have integrated that quite well. See, here you see Tony Chocolonely again. And what Tony Chocolonely does very nicely, they have three overarching goals when it comes to their transformative roadmap in making slave-free chocolate and trying to make the whole industry slave-free chocolate with a lot of business partners. They say, okay, Tony creates awareness, Tony leads by example, and Tony inspires to act. Lots to do with what we were talking about, showing that you act in line with your point of view, but also engaging others with it. And for each overarching viewpoint, they annually show how many goals within those overarching goals they have reached, which one they haven't reached or partially achieved. But at the same time, they also show numbers about the degree in which their brand awareness has increased, or that people buy their chocolate bars. So you see that transformative measures and strategic measures are intertwined. I think it's a beautiful way of reporting your impact. One more example, this is Dove. Dove also has a very strong novel point of view, and I think over the past years they have done a lot to engage people into this point of view. You can look up more about it on the internet. And when they started it, they were very transparent about their branding goals. And you see here them mentioning what the launch of their social campaign, and now I'm using the word campaign, but for lack of better words, but they had a very nice way to express their point of view in a video, and it was in fact the starter of a real dialogue with stakeholders. But at the same time, they also are very transparent about the goals they have set for themselves when it comes to improving self-esteem among young girls. And they show every year to what extent they have achieved those goals. So again, a way to integrate both your strategic and your transformative goals. Well, so I started this presentation with the point that, sorry, I'm going a bit too quick here, with the point that organizations should play a renewing role in our society of change. But in fact, I would rather plead in these times for collaborative thought leadership during this post-corona crisis. Well, we're now still in the middle of the crisis, but during the post-corona crisis, governments and organizations and educations and citizens can work together based on shared novel points of views. And luckily, we already have some exciting examples of cities or areas who work together based on common purpose or a strong new way of thinking. But I believe that these unprecedented times might be really a tipping point for organizations in all forms to come together. And I think the framework that I presented might be a very nice guide to do so. So, guys, I'm going to finish this presentation. I want to thank you a lot. I'm an associate professor at Fontys University, and we work together with a lot of companies, students, and so on to bring thought leadership further, to bring our thinking on thought leadership further. So if you want to reach us, have a look at our website, send me an email. I try to be active on